My final presentation is on the new age of online surveillance and its effects. So, surveillance has always been a part of society, but has taken many different forms and has evolved as technology goes on and time goes on. I wanted to focus on specifically 1990s up until today because that's when the online surveillance really took place. A term that relates to this topic is the idea of the triple revolution. And this concept was greatly influential on how we interact with each other in society because this idea is that social connection was at its highest ever. With all this information in mind, my thesis statement is posted on the slide. So for my first question, I wanted to keep it quite broad because of the many different results. From my research, I found that one large effect is the amount of self-censorship that now occurs. One researcher at Harvard wanted to know how the Google search engine has changed. Penny found that terrorist-related words that were Googled drastically decreased and consecutively decreased as time went on as a result of the Snowden revelation. His conclusion was that the public was now engaging in self-censorship. And that is quite evident that it is occurring from his research. Moving on, privacy has become a commodity in today's marketplace. Our personal information is all throughout the digital world, and our data, and it's all up for sale. Every different application that we use records, collects, and then sells this data to different government agencies and private companies. Another effect that online surveillance has is its chilling effects. The chilling effect occurs when there are changes in behavior by individuals that are aware they are under surveillance in order to conform to expectations that surveyors have. Now, there's a great deal of chilling effects that occurs as a result of peer-to-peer surveillance, sometimes called lateral surveillance, which we discussed briefly in class. This has resulted from the rise of digital platforms, specifically social media networks. And further, as evidence in Minoka's journal, there is now an extended chilling effect, which involves users of social media monitoring offline behavior for fear that these accounts might be posted online. So even though there's a heavy presence of surveillance, some people are still unaware of this fact. They simply don't want to know that they are being watched because it can create lots of anxiety and stress. One article that I found interesting was about location tracking that applications do. So Valentino DeVries starts the article by eerily detailing the whereabouts of a 46-year-old math teacher as she goes about her everyday life. Her location is known because she allows her apps to track her location and sell this history. The author found that at least 75 companies receive location data, and many of these admit to tracking about 200 million mobile devices. So here's my last question. From my research, this last question has proved to be a very complex question with many different results. It's interesting to think about this question in relation to the panopticon prison design theory that Jeremy Bentham created that we discussed in class and in one of the social breakdown podcasts we listened to. So Bentham theorized that if people had the illusion of being continuously watched, they would learn to self-monitor themselves even if there was no guard in the tower. It can be easier to think that this level of surveillance is okay, simply because a lot of people have experienced surveillance to this extent for many years. There are reasons why the surveillance started to occur, because of the history of our country specifically, can help justify this level of surveillance that we have now. Many traumatic and influential events have occurred that have made us heighten security and surveillance in just the last 20 years alone. So these are the two theoretical perspectives that I think connect nicely to my topic. Social control theory was devised in 1969 and in essence proposes that people's relationships, commitments, values, norms, and beliefs encourage them not to deviate from normal social expectations. Deviance is thus avoided because of the strong influence of both internal and external social controls. This relates to the self-monitoring that occurs on the internet in relation to online surveillance. People change their behavior in order not to deviate from the norm and serve the consequences. It's interesting to read how social theory talks about how the absence of close relationships with conventional others can free individuals from social constraints, thereby allowing them to engage in delinquency. When people use the internet, users can feel pressured to conform to these social constraints. Next, the functionalist perspective can also be connected to these ideas. Functionalism is comprised of the idea that society is a system of interconnected parts that work together in harmony to maintain a state of balance and social equilibrium for the whole. And there's much emphasis put onto the interconnectedness by focusing on each individual part and how it influences each other. This means that everything has an effect on something else. Therefore, the increase in surveillance has resulted in more self monitoring, chilling effects, and paranoia surrounding new technologies. Overall, there are so many advantages and disadvantages to the new digital environment or techno-social life that we live in now. With the formation of the internet and countless different technologies, there came surveillance, but not only government agencies, but also private companies. And of course, there came loads of different effects on society as well. I hope you learned a little something about the effects and consequences of online surveillance on society as a whole from this presentation. And finally, here are some questions that I think you guys can answer and hope you can think about in depth.